You know, there are a lot of games released in arcades that have never made it to consoles that really should have. And Sega, for example, has tons of them. Today, I want to focus on two of these games. Both racing games, both 3D, and both made to show off the hardware that they were developed for. So why weren't Sega Super GT and Daytona USA 2 reported to home consoles? So first off, I'm going to talk about the games themselves. Sega Super GT, or SCUD Race depending on where you live, is a racing game released in 1996 for Sega's Model 3 hardware. It's loosely based on the BPR Global GT, an international sports car racing series. In the game, there's an option of 4 licensed GT cars and 4 tracks ranging from beginner to expert. The tracks themselves are interesting, I guess. And overall, the game is pretty good. It's just not as memorable as it could be. At the time, this was considered a spiritual sequel to Daytona USA, until they actually released a sequel to Daytona USA. Daytona USA 2, Battle on the Edge, is the 1998 sequel to the extremely successful and popular Daytona USA, released in 1993. It's set up in a very similar way to the first game. There are 3 car options instead of 2, and it's got 3 tracks, beginner, advanced, and expert. I love the original Daytona USA, and this sequel has everything that I would have hoped for. This game is an expansion of the first Daytona, and arguably improves upon it. It also got an update for arcades, called Daytona USA 2, Power Edition, released the exact same year. Some of the major changes include tweaking the physics, putting the original car from the first game back in this one, and the most important change, having the guy who did the soundtrack for the first game do the soundtrack for this one. I don't want to make this a review of either game, but both really show off the Model 3 hardware with detailed textures and models, and both keep a consistently smooth frame rate of 60 FPS. I've played both these games in the arcades a few times, and both these games were successful in the arcades, but neither of them were ported to a home console. Sega has never given an official explanation as to why. This is honestly a very baffling decision, considering the fact that these games would have been perfect for the Sega Dreamcast, their newest console at the time. Daytona in particular, because it was released in arcades only months before the launch of the Sega Dreamcast in Japan, which, unlike the American launch of the Dreamcast, was very disappointing. Something interesting to note is that according to Sega Retro, SCUD Race was going to be ported to the Sega Saturn at one point, and you can even see the Saturn logo in the beginner stage. But development was moved to the Dreamcast. It got as far as showing off sections of the game in private to demonstrate the power of the Dreamcast to developers, but it was quietly cancelled. Apparently, Sega didn't want to be only known for porting arcade games to the Dreamcast. Even though arcade ports were their thing for years, but what do I know? Another reason that fans have brought up is that the actual real-life SCUD Race, the BPR Global GT series, was discontinued only a year after the game was released. Some Dreamcast dev kits have the SCUD Race demos on them, which technically puts it farther ahead than what Daytona USA got to. I'm not sure if Sega officially mentioned considering a Daytona USA 2 Dreamcast release, but I'm pretty sure they did, considering just how successful the game was. But I think the main reason why they never got around to it is because they lost the Daytona license a few years after the second game came out, which for obvious reasons is a big part of the game. So instead of trying to get a port out of Daytona USA 2 as quickly as possible for the Dreamcast, they instead released Daytona USA 2001, which is a remake of the first game. Me personally, I've never played it, but I've heard mixed things. Something else to think about is the fact that we don't know how difficult it would have been to port either of these games, due to how different the hardware is, though it couldn't have been that hard, but who knows. And those reasons are the reasons why I think that SCUD Race and Daytona USA 2 were never ported to home consoles. It's pretty disappointing too, because both of these were pretty good games. And focusing on Daytona for a second, because Daytona USA is one of my favorite games, Sega released the first Daytona USA for the Xbox 360 and PS3 a few years ago, and it was great. It actively improved the original game, running in 1080p widescreen 60 FPS. I would personally recommend downloading it and playing it before PSN and Xbox Live get taken down and the game's just gone forever, because it's just great. I also should mention that Sega did make a Daytona USA 3 called Daytona Championship USA for the arcades. I haven't played it, but honestly, it looks pretty bad. I guess I don't like the game either, because I kid you not, I am not joking. Sega accidentally leaked the game in its entirety for the PC for free on their own website and didn't even realize it. You can play the game right now. If your computer has decent specs, you can play it for free right now. You know, by this point, I think that SCUD Race is going to stay arcade only. Mostly because there are no more BPR GT races, and Sega probably doesn't have the rights to use any of these cars anymore. I just hope that Daytona USA 2 gets re-released, because they seem to have the license again. And that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. This was on my mind for a very long time. I'm Zero Night. Thanks for watching.